If you'll follow the program here on the agenda page, you will see that we first have the Attorney General candidate speaking. To keep it fair, in alphabetical order, by last name, the first candidate that will be speaking for Attorney General is Holly Benson, and she will be introduced once again by the Honorable State Representative representing District 110, Esteban L. Bobo, Jr.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning, everybody. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge the residents of the city of Hialeah that are here with us today. Don't make this crazy. Okay. And I'd also like to acknowledge and congratulate all of those that that are willing to put their name on the ballot and serve their community. For those that have done it, they understand the sacrifice not only on themselves personally, but also on their families, and they should be all congratulated for taking that step and running. I want to share a little bit about my friend, Holly Benson. $19 billion. I want you to try to register that number for a second. $19 billion is the amount of money that the state of Florida dedicates to Medicaid. It's a third of our budget. And it's wrought with fraud and abuse. And I think one of the missions that the next Attorney General will be dealing with is how to get their arms around that. And unfortunately, and we need to be honest in these debates and these conversations, unfortunately, we are at the epicenter of where the fraud and the abuse happens. And the next Attorney General will be mandated to step forward and tackle this critical issue. It is so critical that when we have debates in Tallahassee with regards to our budget on more teachers, better education, books, whatnot, we begin handicapped from the moment we start when you have this problem in our community. Holly Benson has been in the front line of that issue. As Secretary of ACA, as a state representative, she has worked with Representative Rene Garcia, she had worked with Representative David Rivera to fight against issues. Is that for Rene Garcia? Yes. A little sidebar, anytime we're in Hialeah, all we have to say is Rene Garcia and then people start cheering. Obviously our next state senator, Rene Garcia. Can you just... Lord. And really his mom is the most important one in the room. That's the most bizarre thing. But Holly was at the front lines, and she has dealt with this issue. She understands how important this issue is, and the mandate that the next Attorney General will be dealing with as far as Medicaid fraud. And the other important issue, and I'm sure she'll talk about, is Obamacare. The federal government has literally mandated states to get into a program that they cannot afford and will literally bankrupt not us really, our children and our grandchildren. Because as every generation goes, every time they face a challenge, generations of the past have stood up to that challenge. My fear is that our generation will just pass it on to our kids. We have great candidates running for Attorney General, all worthy of support. But it is my honor to introduce the person who I hope is the next Attorney General, my friend Holly.
Well, thank you so much for that gracious introduction, and thank you for all of your work on the front lines. But without any further ado, apparently all I have to say is Renee Garcia.
Yay!
Thank you for the gratuitous applause line, Senator. You know, over the last 10 years, I've spent a lot of time traveling this beautiful state, listening to the stories of the people I've served, and they tell me why they came here, whether it was to raise a family or start a small business or spend their retirement years. They all had their version of the Florida dream. But in the past couple of years, their stories have become more concerned as they watch growing deficit, rising unemployment, and all of them are concerned about the true costs of federal health care reform. You know, over 2 centuries ago, Alexis de Tocqueville warned us. He said, "The American Republic will endure until Congress discovers that it can bribe the public with the public's money." And the bribe just got a whole lot bigger as President Obama decided to deliver on his campaign promise of universal health care. We watched as one by one they baited reluctant Democrats with little bits of pork in their district, until one Sunday in March they took the vote to send us down the slippery slope towards socialized medicine. When Congressman stood up, he said we are rapidly approaching the tipping point where more Americans depend on the federal government than on themselves for their livelihoods. And if we ever cross that point, the consequences will be felt by every American, every generation to come, unless we act. I'm proud to say that immediately following the passage of that reform, General McCollum filed a lawsuit in my hometown of Pensacola. It is a fight that we must win, and I am ready. In the House, I made healthcare my specialty. I worked with Governor Bush and Renee Garcia to transform our Medicaid program. We based our reform on market principles and personal responsibility, and you know what? It worked. Then I served as Secretary of the Agency for Healthcare Administration and saw firsthand complexities involved in a government-run healthcare program. Make no mistake about it, a universal government-run program will ultimately result in more bureaucratic rationing of care and less access to innovation in treatments and prescriptions. And what's worse, will leave our Constitution in tatters. This reform violates the Constitution. We're challenging it on a couple of grounds. It violates the Commerce Clause. Never before has the federal government been able to compel us to purchase something simply for the act of existing. And it violates the 10th Amendment because it represents a massive, unfunded mandate to the states. Then, Barack Obama's chief of staff says the philosophy is never let a good crisis go to waste. So what's next? Look, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to be a conservative. I was elected with leaders like Marco Rubio and Adam Putnam. We're elected. All right, the other obvious applause line, right, Tony?
Yeah.
Look, we were elected on promises of less government, lower taxes, and more freedom. I, like my mentor Jeb Bush, from the tips of my toes to the top of my head, am a free market capitalist, but beyond that, I am pro-life. I'm rated A+ by the NRA. And I'd be honored to have your support to fight for our values. Nothing that the next Attorney General takes on will be of the magnitude of this healthcare lawsuit, but know this. My everyday mission will be to put the bad guys behind bars and to put the good guys back to work.
Yes.
I'll make sure that we have laws with teeth so that our local law enforcement can keep our neighborhoods and families safe, and so that we can stop Medicaid fraud. I'll create a regulatory strike force to eliminate the unnecessary regulation that is stifling entrepreneurs all across our state. And ladies and gentlemen, I will fight for tort reform.
Oh, yay!
When you know that Florida's home to whocanisue.com, well then you know it's time to boot them out. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I am a true Ronald Reagan optimist. I believe that Florida's best days are ahead. I can't do it without your help and your vote. Thank you all so much for all the fights that you've taken on on behalf of the families and the unborn of Florida. Thank you so much. Please know I'd be honored to have your support and your vote. Thank you again.